Good morning. Can you hear me? Yeah. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. And welcome you all to the panel discussion. Public safety, disaster management. That's very interesting words. I hope the public safety means the public safety in cyberspace. Disaster basically how to recover and operations. I think there are two things which happens in the cyberspace, which are things happen intentionally and unintentionally. In both the cases, one needs to work out procedures and mechanisms so that your operations do not suffer. And the amount of investment that you make or the structures which you have created for ensuring your operations depends upon the value you put those losses which take place. As far as the safety is concerned, we're looking at the individual trying to do transactions on the cyberspace. How do you ensure it's protected? And so I'm giving the interpretation of public safety rather in a very narrow sense. You have to ensure your transactions are safeguarded. If information which is provided to a variety of applications is protected, it's not shared. So privacy rights are there. So there are some of the aspects which needs to be looked at. And from what I understand from the organizers is that they're looking at very particular concept, particular aspects of this public safety and disaster management. I'm pretty sure the speakers know what they're referring to. They're looking at discussions on the intelligence analysis and sharing, investigation management, integrated IT for police. I think these are the three concepts which they're looking at. I'm not very sure whether the speakers are aware of these particular three concepts which they are trying to make it, the points to be discussed in this particular conference. But looking at that, as far as the Indian concern is concerned, we have the IT Act 2000, which we have implemented. And this basis for this Information Technology Act 2000 was to protect the e-commerce transactions, e-governance and e-commerce transactions in the cyberspace. It's basically to facilitate. So if you look at the Act of the Indian IT Act, 70 to 80% deals with this particular aspect, how to facilitate the e-commerce and e-governance applications. And as a part of this particular thing, to protect these particular transactions for e-commerce and e-transactions, we have created the register signatures. We have created my office, which is the control of secretary and authorities. We also make sure these are all to ensure the national security, the neighborly relations, and the various acts which we have created as a part of the governance of this particular country are protected. So we got the intersection, section 69 of the Act. We also have facilitated the various investigations. We have the section 28 of the IT Act, which has been provided, 28 and 29. And we assume certain crimes are going to be committed on the cyberspace. And we have recognized those crimes in the Act. And we have also created a process and procedures under punishment, which has been specified in the Act. But one has to recognize cyberspace is not static, it's a dynamic, it changes. The crimes that are committed to such things. We cannot use the same vocabulary all over the place and all over the time. Those aren't changing. The way that people perform the crime on the cyberspace varies. So you have the issue of how the crimes are committed, and you need the investigation, and you need the punishment of those particular things. To facilitate this, because of its dynamic nature, we have created a tribunal, and the tribunal, these acts, these crimes are referred to. We have the people who have identified IT secretary in each of the states which are responsible for dealing with this, and from them it goes to the tribunal. In the case of the digital signatures, the cases comes to me, and I deal with, and they are finally referred to the High Court and Supreme Court process. That's the process which has been created by the IT Act. And we made a little more clarification and little more stringent. We expanded this particular thing much further. Because it's not that the crimes you investigate in a normal sense. It's simply different. Because if you take a copy, a printout of any one of those things, every copy looks original. How do you distinguish from the original to the copy? Secondly, you have a beautiful concept, a beautiful tool on cyberspace, cut and paste. You can have any piece of information, you can cut and paste it, and you will never know what is exactly the original one and how it's been modified. This is another thing which has to be careful about it when you're dealing. Suppose I give a transaction saying that subtract 10,000 rupees, and right, and somewhere it will go and subtract 1 lakh rupees. So 100,000 rupees. We also have to recognize very interesting thing. We have active controls out there in some of the word processors and all those things. You have settings which are there, which you can beautifully play with it, and you can tell the settings something like that. Before 1 o'clock, show me 1,000 rupees. After 1 o'clock, show me 10,000 rupees. So using word processor, you can set all those settings. So when you see that before 1 o'clock, you will see the transaction only 1,000 rupees. If you see after 1 o'clock, 10,000, whether you are aware of that. So when you are trying to do this particular thing, you need to protect it. So how an investigation which you need to do that, you need to be like careful about it. That's the reason. If you look at it, we give the directions to the various applications. When you are digitally signing them, do not use active control. Plain text to be digitally signed. All the important concepts. These are important. You have beautiful rules and regulations. Okay? But when they are implemented, these protocols are implemented, you have to very sacrosanctly has to be implemented particularly. Otherwise, you get into trouble. So when you are trying to investigate, you have to be aware of this particular thing. There are lots of things which can happen. Cyberspace is a very, very dangerous space which you have to look at. We may not be aware. For example, in the design of the particular thing is concerned, in the chip design and original, somebody inputs some sort of code. You do whatever testing is concerned in the various processing, you will never know what happened to the particular thing. And the designer, at any particular point of time, initiate that code, you can be very massacred under the cyber system. It's possible to do that. There are lots of examples which are there. And there are certain rules and regulations. For example, encryption is concerned, you have to be again very careful. For example, use doesn't allow us to use particular length of the encryption is concerned. So when you go to standards which you are trying to use them, when you get that particular implemented in this particular part of the world, you will get a very, in the contract when you sign them, there is a very little small letter words that for these countries there is something happens to the. So you have to be careful. When you are talking about implementing the standards, you need to have a mechanism of testing them locally. So these are all part and parcel of the investigation. So you need to have sophisticated tools, and government is very concerned about it. We are trying to create rules and regulations. Investigation is very, very vital. We need to have the strength, mechanism, and the expertise to do this particular thing. And you also need to create it today as and when e-governance applications takes more and more. You need to create a backup. Like in the case of land records, we keep the land record from hundreds of years is available. You can go to the oldest record and see what the original document is all about. And any modification is available because some signatures exist. Because if you remember, in a manual system, whenever you make a change, you put your signature, so you know what the guy is happening. When you are creating these things, you always take a backup or recovery of disaster systems which you created. How do you ensure the contents of the disaster recovery which you created, all the archival systems, all the records protected, that is the original which has not been modified by anybody else. How do you ensure of those things? So these are all various parts, and you require the strength and expertise to investigate. The original record is original record. Nobody has modified it into the archival system, etc. These are all issues which needs to be concerned that we are in the government which are trying to create like a physical records. If you look at the government of India has a very fantastic procedures and mechanisms to take archival of records. We have a record room and there's a procedure very well defined by the government of India. I'm pretty sure the state governments have it. Similar thing which needs to be implemented when you are trying to do the e-governance record. The land records, you are talking about registration process is concerned, company registration, passport information, a variety of those information which goes to the archive. How do you ensure that it is not modified, it is as per the original is concerned. And I'm pretty sure we have experts here in this panel which will look into how they will find out and how they will investigate and take these codes or whatever these things concerned, so that the person who commits a crime is punished and we take proper precautions to protect us into the cyberspace. I think we have currently 4 speakers. 2 speakers are not coming. Mr. Krishna Prasad is not going to be here. Mr. Vijay Sarthi is also not going to be here. We have Mr. Mishra, has already been introduced, Mr. Jung, Mr. Cherian, Mr. Johns, and Mr. R.P. Saxena is yet to come. Now I start one by one in the same order that has been introduced. I will first request Mr. Mishra. He is the Inspector General of Police, State Cyber Cell, Madhya Pradesh Police Government. You want to comment?